Today we're going to talk about a new feature coming to CSS, and that is container queries. The browser support's not quite ready for production use, but Tailwind 3.2 was just released. They added support for this feature, and I'm super excited about it. So today we're going to take a look at it by looking at this sample news article website right here. Now, if you've never heard of container queries before, they're basically like media queries for the overall screen, except they apply only to specific chunks of our HTML. And so that makes container queries perfect for things like these article cards here, which we can see have a few different layouts depending on how much space they have available to them. And so we can see that even though there's different treatments of each one of these cards on our page, there's a lot of duplication in our markup because most of the markup is the same. There's just kind of some slight layout and size adjustments between kind of the large, small, and medium card styles here. So let's see how we would solve this duplication problem today by making a shared article card component. And we're going to start right up here at this first large treatment right here, which is basically this div. You can see if we comment that out, it goes away. So I'm just going to split the screen down, and right at the bottom of our file, let's create a new article card component. And this is going to basically return all this markup. And we'll go ahead and pass in our article. So right here, we should be able to render an article card and pass in our article, and we'll get this top treatment back just like that. So now if we come to the middle section where we have our 3-column grid, we're going to see this small treatment right here. So what I'm going to do is just copy this list right here. And let's go ahead and render our article card. We can key this, and we can also pass in the article just like this. And we're going to see a pretty funny treatment going on here because these are all using the large variant up here. And so to customize this article card based on which treatment we want, we're going to need to expose a new prop to our article card. Let's call it size. And we'll say the top one is size L for large, and we'll make this size S for small. And now we can come here and render some conditional classes just by turning this into an expression. And first, let's go ahead and get rid of this 2-column layout, right? Because that's working when we have all this space, but these guys down here are stacked. So if we just removed grid columns 2, we can see that's a step in the right direction here, but that breaks this one. So what we really want to do is say if the size is large, we want grid columns 2, otherwise we don't want anything. And so this is kind of the best way today to start customizing these kind of shared components. Let's keep going here, and if we take a look, our images actually have a fixed aspect ratio. We can see right here, they're 3:2. So we can come to our image, turn this into an expression, and if the size is small, we want that aspect 3:2 back. And we can see comparing our original markup, this height and width full, this is really for kind of the hero article, so we can just slap that on for the other variant. And now these pictures are matching our original right here, but we still have this kind of full height image in our large variant. Next, we can see the title text here is still too big. And if we look at our original code, we'll see this is a text XL, whereas our large gets a 3XL. So let's come back here, turn this into an expression. And if the size is small, we want that text XL. Otherwise, we want to grab this and move it right there. And we'll also see the leading 9 here, the extra space. That's for the large treatment as well. So now these titles look great. We can do the same thing for the summary. And if the size is small, we'll grab leading 7. Otherwise, we'll grab text XL and leading 8. Now that's matched up, and that text looks great. Now it looks like we have a little bit of a layout problem here. This is getting pushed down. And if we come look at our top div, we're having this grid treatment, which we're using for this, but for this, maybe grid doesn't really make sense. I think I would move the grid just to the large portion here. And then if we still want to use this gap, we can actually just make this a flex and flex column. I think this is how I would lay this out. And so now we can kind of see everything snapping into place. Now next, it looks like these avatars here are a little bit smaller. So if we come down to this author section, we can see that the author's image is only 6 units on our small treatment. So if the size is small, let's use height 6 and width 6, otherwise height 12 and width 12. This margin top here is also only margin top 5. So we can conditionally apply that. If the size is small, margin top 5. Otherwise, margin top 11. And these are also on the same line, so that's a perfect use case for flex. If the size is small, let's make this flex. That'll kind of bring these together. This padding here looks like it's for the large variant, so we can just move that right in here. And then up here we have some space right here and right here between the image and the name. I think conceptually this would actually be better as a space X property on this container. So this would be 3 right here. And then this is going to change this a little bit. We can actually remove this PL5 and then bump this space X3, which it should be on small, to space X5 on large. Give us a little bit more breathing room right there. So conceptually, I like that space kind of on the container to separate these two. And then we can see we have this little mid dot right here. Let's grab that from our original template. We'll drop that right here. And there we can see it showing up, but it's also showing up in our large variant. So let's conditionally render this if the size is small. We'll go ahead and drop that in there. Okay, so if we take a look at these are looking pretty good. I think that is all of the changes. So we can come and get rid of kind of our second map right here and take a look at what we have. So we're back to the first 2 sections, but now they're being rendered with this single article card. And all we have to do is customize it by passing in a size prop to get these 2 different treatments. So not too bad. Let's go ahead and do this last one real quick. And we'll do the same thing where we kind of duplicate this. Let's grab article card and let's make it size medium. So size medium looks a lot more like our small size because the picture is on top, and that's kind of what our small treatment is. And these images are also 3 by 2. We can see that right here in our original markup. So this is going to be if the size is small or medium. Let's just flip this around. We'll put height full, width full in the beginning. And that should update our medium treatment right here. Let's take a look at the title. If we're small, it's XL. Here we see a 2XL and a leading 9. So let's go ahead and add size is medium. Text 2XL and leading 9 otherwise. And that takes care of that. The summary also has kind of a default text. So this is going to be small or medium. That fixes that. And then the author section here looks like it also has this 5 space above it. So I think this is going to be small or medium to get that original treatment. And now we can come here and delete these. And I think we're almost done, except I noticed the tracking type here got snuck in to the small card. We only want this on medium and large, just like that. And now if we close that and take a look, we can see kind of where we ended up with just a React prop and a React component using this size prop we have to customize which treatment we use based on how it's laid out. Now, our article card component definitely reduced some duplication here in our template, but we have this kind of coupling between how our articles are laid out and which size card we use, right? So usually in a layout like this, you might see this 3-column grid in our middle section here happen at a certain breakpoint. So maybe once we're on a medium screen, we show 3 cards right here. So if we shrink this, what we're going to see happen is we now go to a single column grid, right? But our treatment hasn't changed. We're still rendering a small article card. And there's no real way to get around this. Maybe we could duplicate this card and kind of do it in 2 different ways. There's no great way to solve this problem today, just from a CSS perspective. There's some React hooks that you can use to see basically how much space your article has and decide which variant to render. But those aren't robust to server-side rendering because you can't read the user's device size from the server. And so usually we stick to CSS-based solutions for this kind of thing. But because we only know the page size and the article itself doesn't know how it's laid out, we don't really have a great solution here. And this is exactly where container queries come in. So let me show you how they work. We're going to come back and I'm going to paste in the original template here and go back to the beginning, and we're going to do the same thing. Create an article card component, grab the original markup here and replace it with article card. And now let's come and render a new list with our small articles, passing them in just like this. And before, this is the point where we had to pass in that size prop so that we could customize these treatments. But with container queries, we can actually customize the card based on how much size it's taking up in the page. And the way we do this is first by adding one root div here. And we're going to give this a class name of container. And this is the beginning of kind of the Tailwind version of container queries, and the API here makes it super easy to do. So now that we've marked this as a container, we already know that we only want this grid calls to apply for large cards. Well, just like we can use these screen size variants in Tailwind as a prefix on classes so that they only apply for certain screen sizes, we can do the same thing with container queries by using @ and then we can pass in any of the screen sizes from our screen's config as a container prefix. So let's just say on medium size here, we want the grid columns to be 2. Now look at this. Our small cards here are stacking, but that grid 2 kicks into place, and that's because of this container query. So isn't that cool? Once the container of the actual card gets to 28 rems, and 28 times 16 is 448 pixels, so 440 pixels and up, we have this 2-up treatment. And that's all without changing anything about how this card is invoked right here. So this card doesn't know it's being rendered inside of a 3-column grid. And if I were to come over and pop open the DevTools and shrink this, look at that. Once the card has less than 448 pixels to actually render, we can see it's at 425. It flips over to kind of our small size variant. I mean, how cool is this? It's basically responsive design for individual UI components within our app. And hopefully you can see just how powerful this is because it lets us make these components that are basically adaptive and respond to however much space they have within their layout. So here we can see the basics of container queries. Let's keep going here. And instead of MD, let's save that large treatment for something like 800 pixels, which is going to be right around 50 rem. So we can just find 3XL. That looks good. And we'll see that kicks in. But now it should swap over much sooner, and we see that it does. So cool. So right here, let's come down to the text, the title right here. And again, the title is XL. And right here we see it's 3XL in our original large treatment. So just like responsive design with Tailwind, we want to start kind of mobile first. So let's make this text XL. And then at the 3XL breakpoint, we'll go ahead and update that. And this letting 9 is also at 3XL. And so is the tracking type. I mean, how easy was that? Look, the text stayed exactly the same right here. And we matched our original treatment right here. It's even easier than using a prop in React because, you know, it's all right here in the CSS. And it's just more terse. It's easier to read. We're already reading classes like this that are responsive and kind of have the larger screen sizes or container sizes at the end of the class list. So it's pretty cool. Next, the summary. This XL is at 3XL right here. And so is the letting. And we remember this MT11. On the small screen, it was MT5. So we can bring that down. The height and width here, it should be 6 and only get up to 12 at the larger screen size. Boom, just like that. Let's make this flex so that these names center out. But for our large treatment, we want them on top of each other. So instead of kind of undoing this like we were doing before, we can just overwrite this and give this a flex column so those stack on that large screen. So again, just like when you're coding normally with Tailwind, the best way to do it is mobile first. You set the styles on the smallest container, and then you overwrite things as you build up to the larger containers. Let's also grab this mid dot right here. And we don't want that here. So on 3XL, we can go ahead and hide that. Pretty cool. Oh, and we missed one thing, the image. This has an aspect of 3:2. And then we wanted this to be height full and 3XL for width full. Now it looks like we didn't have that problem before, and it might just be because we had this extra div on the outside, the way it's handling that layout. Seems like we didn't need to change that grid property anymore. So that's pretty nice, and these look pretty good. Oh, there's a little bit of extra space right here. That was right here, which we moved up to space X3, I believe. And then right here, we're gonna have 3XL space X5. Look at that. It's just fun too. I mean, it's easier to see. I'm not having to change strings to JSX expressions and decide on an API. It's basically already done for me. So that takes care of small. Let's do it again for medium. Grab the article card, get these braces right. And again, because we're kind of mobile firsting this, we can see our medium cards already look a lot more similar to kind of the final result we want because they're based on the small styles here and everything's just stacking up nicely. So I think we just need to make a few tweaks, starting with the title, which we can see here is a bit bigger. And that's from this text to XL. So what container query should we use for these medium cards? If we take a look, they're about 413 pixels. So 413 divided by 16 is 25. So let's say something a little bit below 25 rem, maybe small. So we can say text to XL. And now the text looks like it's matching perfectly. We also want that letting 7 on small screens. Tighten that up a little bit. And we also want the tracking type, which we currently have over here. So let's just bring this down to small. And now it'll apply both to our medium treatment and to our large treatment. Pretty cool. Let's take a look at our summary. This should be leading 7. And then we see the author gets the bigger treatment as well. So let's change this to small. And we also want to stack the names. We'll change this to small. Now they're stacked. And we actually want to hide this on small so there's no mid dot right there. So look at that. That looks pretty close. It looks like we have a few things here. The space, I think we missed something. This leading 6, that's what it is. So let's go ahead and slap small leading 6 on this author title and name. That pushes that out. That looks good. And the space here looks a little tight, and it looks like it jumps to 4 here on small. So we can say small space x4. Okay, that's looking good. And it looks like the line height here got a little bit tight. The title should be leading 9. And so I think I grabbed that from the wrong line here. So 9 is what we want. Now that matches up, and that means we can delete this one as well. So this is still 9. Everything here looks great. And now I think these two are matching. So let's close this bottom pane right here. And let's get rid of these articles. And let's take a look. Here's kind of our final page. The layout looks great. And this is the coolest part. We've got no responsive design in our project currently at all. None of the layouts are changing. And we know because of our container queries, if we shrink these, we're going to see the cards adjust to the space that they actually have. And so you'll see kind of this smaller treatment here, even for the medium cards. Once they get to a certain size, the author here collapses to a single line. The text shrinks a little bit, so that's nice. Now, of course, we still want to actually change our layouts on screens. That's like a layout concern. So again, let's just say we only want 3 columns here on medium, and or maybe even large. And we only want 2 on medium, something like that. Well, look at this. We have a single column here, and every card is getting the same small treatment. And that's just because that's how much space the card has available, and our article card is now smart enough to know its context. And as we grow this, right, and we have the layouts taking effect, we're going to see basically the best version of the card is always going to be used in whatever layout we place it. So hopefully you can see this is just way cooler than the style prop we had before. We have decoupled the overall surrounding layout of our UI component with the best representation of that component for the layout. And so these cards, again, don't know anything about the screen size that they're being served on. This is all also robust to server-side rendering because the browser's taking care of the work. It knows once it renders how big the containers are, so it can know which container query it should use. But we're not having to run any JavaScript. The initial render is not going to fork or anything like that. Everything's going to work just like the rest of our Tailwind code because it's all CSS. And needless to say, this is a pretty exciting feature. So again, I wanted to make that video to show you this feature off. It's a little bit soon to use it in production, but this is super exciting. I think it's going to give us kind of a new opportunity to make better encapsulated components, especially with things like third-party components or components that you write and share with your team where you might not know the context they're going to be displayed in. Container queries are going to be awesome just to have this level of encapsulation and also have it taken care of just by CSS. It doesn't matter if you're using React or Rails or server-side languages or client-side languages. It's just a new standard coming to CSS. So hope you enjoyed that. And if you want to try it out in your own Tailwind projects, be sure to upgrade to Tailwind 3.2. I will include a link to the release blog post in this video. Otherwise, that's it for this one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.